Hello and welcome back to another episode of You Want to Do What. Today we've got Christopher Giancarlo on. He's CryptoDad and his book out is The Fight for the Future of Money. Hi, Christopher.
Hey, good to see you. Good to speak to you.
Great to speak to you. Really excited about this. We wanted to get you on because you've had a really, a different career. You've done a lot of different things. Do you want to just take a minute to explain about what you do?
Sure. So, hello, everybody. I'm Chris Giancarlo, and I'm the author of a new book called CryptoDad, The Fight for the Future of Money. CryptoDad's a title that I didn't seek for myself. It was actually one that was given to me by folks in the Twitterverse and the crypto universe. And how I got here is a really fun story. At least it's been fun for me. I came out of college in 1981 and went on to law school at Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee, where I learned to play the banjo in addition to learning to practice law. And I then went on to Wall Street, and I spent the next 16 years as a practicing lawyer in New York and in London. I was in London for several years, advising a lot of technology companies coming out of research parks around Oxford and Cambridge and Durham and elsewhere on doing business in the United States, selling their technology products and services, a lot in the area of biotech, and ultimately helping some companies go public on the NASDAQ and other markets here in the United States. And it was as a result of that work that in the year 2000, I was asked to help a group of British entrepreneurs actually launch a product in the United States and take that product public that's used to price a complex instrument called a currency option, which
Mm-hmm.
is basically a way of estimating where different currency rates will go in the future. And that marketplace uses a standard, a benchmark pricing tool, sort of like, feet and inches or the metric system. Well, they had come up with basically a way of measuring where the price should be for these different transactions. And so I left the law practice after 16 years, joined them as head of corporate development with the idea of taking this company public. Well, in fact, the market changed dramatically in the spring of 2000. There was a sort of a short-term market crash. We shelved that. We wound up selling the company to a group of Wall Street entrepreneurs that were building some of the first electronic trading systems for
Wow.
trading these very sophisticated financial products. And so I stayed with them, and we grew the firm very rapidly from a small partnership of about 16 partners into a world straddling operation. We raised private equity and then took the company public. We conducted an IPO on the NASDAQ in 2006, and then we went on to do a secondary offering on the New York Stock Exchange. And we became the world's largest trading venue for a very complex financial product called a credit default swap. And if you've ever heard that term, many people identify it as having been at the center of the 2008 financial crisis. Now, we didn't trade these instruments, we operated the marketplace. We were the exchange where these instruments trade. And I won't get into whether or not what role they played in the financial crisis, but I will tell you that I became a supporter of some of the reforms to this marketplace that eventually made its way into a massive piece of financial legislation called the Dodd-Frank Act in the United States, and actually had a hand in crafting some of those provisions and became a supporter of it. And
Wow.
so the Obama administration took note of my support of it, and in 2013 asked me if I would come to Washington and join as a member of a commission called the Commodity Futures Trading Commission that was implementing some of these reforms to the financial market. And so,
Wow.
after 16 years as a practicing lawyer in New York and London, and now 14 years as an entrepreneur on Wall Street, and having successfully taken my company public, I left those two careers and went to Washington and became a commissioner on a very prominent Washington agency, one that was taking a very early interest in some of the early development of Bitcoin. And in 2015, my agency, the first in Washington, declared Bitcoin to be under its jurisdiction. And to my great surprise, in 2016, Donald Trump was elected president. I hadn't expected that, and I was certainly didn't expect that he would ask me to serve as chairman of the agency, having served 2.5 years as a commissioner. And I like to believe it was on the merits of my work and not politics, because I didn't go to Washington to get involved in politics to any great extent. And so, having been first unanimously confirmed by the Senate to join the commission, I was once again unanimously confirmed to head the commission in 2017. And I then served out the remainder of my term, 2.5 years. But it was a very eventful 2.5 years that I served as chairman, 5 years in total, because in 2017, the CFTC, my agency, greenlighted the world's first regulated, transparent, liquid market for Bitcoin. And in this case, it was Bitcoin futures, the ability to take a view as to where the price of Bitcoin would head 30 days, 90 days, 6 months out, which is what futures markets do. And that market, because it was regulated by a premier global agency, the CFTC, became increasingly the place where the price of Bitcoin is set in global markets. And more importantly, it became a marketplace where large, well-regulated institutions like pension funds and insurance companies could actually engage in the cryptocurrency market. Up until then, cryptocurrency markets had been primarily retail, but this allowed institutional engagement in crypto. And so I'm firmly of the belief that had we not greenlighted the creation of that market, cryptocurrency wouldn't be the $2.5 trillion market it is today, with enormous amount of institutional interest from large pension funds, insurance companies, et cetera. So anyway, I left the agency at the end of my 5-year term in 2019, and have now entered my 4th career. And this time as an author. I've just published CryptoDad, The Fight for the Future of Money. That is both it's sort of a story of my engagement with crypto, the role of the CFTC, but it's a look forward to where I think crypto is going into the future, and more importantly, where I think digital money is going. And to that extent, I recently launched a foundation, the Digital Dollar Foundation, and we've begun something called the Digital Dollar Project, which is looking into what digital sovereign money will look like in the future. And I talk about that in my book. So how's that for a start, Daniel, as to sort of the arc of my career?
What a career.
I also play banjo in a great band, too, by the way, but that's another story.
Well, what a career. I mean, that's incredible. Because, you've gone into some of the most difficult careers in the world as well, that, practicing law, especially in the world of finance. Why did you choose to do that? Why did you choose to go into law?
So everything I've done in my life has been a matter of just putting one foot in front of the other as to where my interest and my passions lie. And to take a phrase that I learned as a child from my grandmother, which was to always walk on the sunny side of the street. I've always just followed career paths because it seems like, the sun is shining over there. It seems interesting to me. I like the feel of that, so I want to go in that direction. And of course, opportunities, present. It's when opportunities present to, in a sense, cross the street to the sunnier side. And so I've always done that. I never in a million years did I, when I came out of university, think that I would wind up going to Washington as the head of an agency or writing a book about crypto. I just did what came next. So when I was in my last 2.5 years of university, I knew I liked to read. I knew I liked to write. I knew I had a knack for taking complex subjects and simplifying them through the written word. And so law school, even though I didn't know I wanted to be a lawyer, law school just seemed like a logical next step after university, because an opportunity to read about disputes and contests of ideas and to write them down and to extrapolate on that. And so I went to law school. I must say I didn't find law school as intellectually stimulating as I thought it would be. And I loved being in university. And I loved the range of issues that I studied. I found law school a little bit like trade school. At first, I enjoyed it more. I didn't actually enjoy the practice of law at first. but
Okay.
there was enough to stimulate me, and it just got better over time. It got better when I actually had the opportunity to help clients solve problems. That's when law kind of clicked for me, when it was not so much writing countless memos late to night or researching arcane issues,
Mm.
or worse, producing documents for transactions. But once it was actually a matter of solving clients' real world problems, and the combination with technology, which has always interested me, of the way to take antiquated systems and update them and make things more efficient. Always interested me. I was very interested and very involved in the first wave of the internet, and so that's when law clicked for me, and I enjoyed it. In fact, when after 14 years, I never thought that I'd leave the law, but then an opportunity came that seemed very exciting, as I mentioned,
Mm.
to get engaged with a client in the area of derivatives.
I think you give a really great bit of advice there about sort of pursuing your passions. And I don't think enough people actually give that as careers advice. Certainly in the UK, you go to school and you get told, pick a career. And for my generation, we're not really going to have 50-year careers, because the world changes so rapidly now. And a job that was done, in previous generations for 50 years won't exist for 50 years. So pursuing your passions and keep moving. But I think people get worried, and they get worried they won't be able to do it, or risk of failure. But your advice is to just go for it, right?
Yeah. So you'll always have risk of failure, right? You cannot let, there is no safety from failure, and if you're afraid of failing, you'll never advance and grow, because you don't learn from your successes. You
Mm.
learn from your failures. You only learn from your failures. I tell my own children in their 20s, I say, celebrate your successes, but learn from your failures, and don't be afraid to fail. Now, you have to have discipline within all of this. You can't just sit in an easy chair and say, I'll just wait till something I love comes along, and meanwhile I'll just keep staring at the telly. I
Mm.
mean, you've got to get out there, and there will be passages in your life's journey that are not happy, happy, happy. There'll be passages in your life journey where things are a bit of a grind. But as long as you feel you're progressing to what I call the sunny side of the street, progressing to where you want to be, uh, I think, at least in my experience, it leads to good things. There's a saying I love that says, "The harder I work, the luckier I get." That's
Yeah.
that's been true for me in life. That the opportunities that have come my way have usually because I've really worked hard at something. It's something that I like. I mean, another phrase is, if you do what you like, you'll never work a day in your life, meaning that it'll never feel like work. And
Mm.
and I would say that for me, just following my nose, following my instincts, working hard, putting up with some days and some passages in life better than others, but yet always following the things that have interested me have made it fun, and opportunities just seem to continue to come when you take that course. It becomes almost like a discipline to condition yourself to listen to your own voice, stick with the things where you have a passion, where you have an aptitude, where you have a facility, and it will just come. A movie that I also liked from when my kids were younger was Finding Nemo.
Yeah, good
and
film.
and, and yeah, life is sort of like being a fish in an ocean, and you have to follow your instincts where you want to go. And if there are different times where there's some danger and there's some bad actors that you've got to work with, be careful of the company you keep. Surround
Mm.
yourself with people that want to advance you and not just themselves. And find mentors, find people that are true, and beware of the sharks out there, because they are there, and you can't always avoid them, but don't let yourself become a victim to them.
I think it's difficult as well sometimes if you're in a career, maybe you're a young person in a career, and you go to your family and friends, you say, do you know what, guys, I'm actually going to do this, and it's something completely different. And sometimes they might look at you like you're mad, but not everyone has to understand what you're doing, right? If it's right for you in your head, then you should go ahead and do it, and don't expect everyone around you to understand your decisions.
I think that's an excellent point. Let me actually pick up on that point, because there are people in all of our lives that themselves have, because of fear or otherwise, not advanced themselves. And they don't necessarily want to see you advance yourself either, because it might actually show up that they haven't advanced themselves. Now, I'm not saying they're bad. It's just that's the nature of human life.
Mm,
The people that truly live this life. If there are people in all of our lives that haven't themselves advanced as much as they would like, and they might hold you back from advancing as much as you would like to. And so if those people are around you, then you have to, politely but firmly, say, thank you very much. I've heard your advice, but you've got to follow your own counsel, and you've got
yeah.
to be truly alive in this world. You've got to live your own life and not somebody else's life. And especially if that somebody else's life would hold you back.
Yeah, it's a great point. So you go from law into being an entrepreneur. Now, I wouldn't necessarily put those two together. I just don't know. Don't know if lawyers would be as risk taking as we perceive entrepreneurs to be. And how was that transition for you?
Yeah, it took a little bit of a transition. When I was approached about joining this Wall Street group that was creating these trading systems, I made it very clear to them that I didn't want to go there to be a lawyer. If I was going to be a lawyer, I was going to remain a lawyer as a partner in the law firm
Mm,
where I was. But I would be happy to go there to focus on the growth aspects, the building of the company. And so with that clear, I then spent the next several years growing the business. And we eventually grew out to be had 18 offices around the world, from
wow.
Tokyo and Singapore and Sydney, across the globe, through Europe, London, Paris, Tel Aviv, South Africa, and of course New York, here in the United States, as well as other offices. And building that platform was fun, but it did take a sort of a reorientation away from the risk identification that lawyers do, and advising clients how to minimize risk, to one of more uh, risk taking,
Hmm.
investment making, and growth. But that was a very healthy transition for me, one that in hindsight, I think broadened me as a person, as an intellect, and one that I'm really glad we enjoyed. I must say that taking the company public was a watershed moment in terms of building wealth for myself and for my family,
Mm.
as well. And I'm really glad that I took that risk, because that then gave me the freedom to do other things in life that I would not have been able to do had I stayed a lawyer. I was able to, fund my kids' fund our retirement, fund my kids' education, and then increasingly make independent decisions as to what I wanted to do, because we had succeeded in taking the company public. Um, I would have never been able to go to Washington and spend 5 years on a government agency head salary, which in the United States is very minimal. But I was able to do it because we had funded our long-term plans through because of the company's IPO.
Wow.
So again, here's a risk that I was willing to take that paid off very nicely, both intellectually and financially, enabling me to make other choices in the course of life.
I think it's interesting at the moment. There's a sort of a culture of um, I'm very much an advocate for people starting their own businesses and being entrepreneurs, definitely. But I think it's been quite heavily glamorized recently, and it is difficult. It's not as easy as everyone makes it seem, and it is a struggle. But what do you think are some really key qualities that helped you to succeed in the world of being an entrepreneur?
Well, it's something I write about in my book. In fact, actually, when I left the firm to go to, I mentioned that software pricing system for currency options. That company actually failed, and so it's the glamour is there, but so is the disappointment. That company failed. Now, luckily, it was bought by this Wall Street partnership that eventually we succeeded and we took the company public. But if there's a saying in Silicon Valley, if you haven't failed, you're not trying hard enough. And as I say, you only learn from your failures, not from your successes. If one is unwilling to fail, don't try to become an entrepreneur. Failure is part of an entrepreneur. So you learn from those failures, and then eventually you put all that information together, and you get it right. Hopefully, not everybody does, but no risk, no reward. And so, for me, the willingness to take risk has, while not always glamorous, worked out very well. And if I had to do it again, I would do it again, even if I didn't know what the odds were and if there was no path, no guarantee of success. More than the glamour, more than the wealth effect of taking a company public, leaving law and going into business made me whole as an individual. It made me a man, and I don't mean that in any way gender specific. I just mean that it made me a whole person. All my life experiences have led to my ability to stand anywhere and to anyone and speak my mind, and know that my life's experience have given me the confidence and the comfort level in my own choices. If and life is it's a sequential building up of character, and if you're afraid to take the risks, you never get that character confirmation. Or to put it another way, if you're willing to take some chances and follow your own nose in life, it's like refining of a metal. You get stronger and stronger, and so more than anything, the benefit of a well-lived life is a well-lived life, and the confidence and the certainty that comes with a well-lived life.
So should we jump into, you going to Washington and how that was for you, and that part of your career? Was it a really enjoyable time for you, or was it quite a challenge?
It was talking about learning new skills all over again. Washington is, it's professional politics, and these people, if you've ever seen House of Cards, either the British version, which I love, or the American version with Kevin Spacey, it's of course a pastiche of the real thing, but I'll tell you, the real thing isn't too far off. I mean, these people play for keeps, and they're pros. And so look here, I'm a guy who by then had spent 30 years on Wall Street, either as a Wall Street lawyer and in London, or as an entrepreneur. And I go to Washington thinking, I'm somebody, and I had to relearn all over again. I mean, these people have techniques and games they play that the complexity and the sophistication is just off the charts.
Wow!
But I learned all that. I talk about this a lot in my book, CryptoDad. A lot of it's my journey through these different careers, especially my time in Washington. I refer to myself as an accidental regulator because I didn't go to Washington just to live a political life. I never expected to be asked by President Obama to serve. I never expected to be asked by President Trump to serve. I'm one of the very few Trump, Obama, both appointed by two very different presidents. I had to learn a lot. In my book, I talk about that after a while, I came to see that most professionals in Washington are either really good at politics and not so good at policy, or really good at policy and not so good at politics. There's a few that are good at both, but most are not. At some point, I came to realize that really politics, both I wasn't great at, I was okay, and I didn't really love, but policy I really liked. I really liked the policy side, and when I executed on policy, I had some really strong successes during my time in Washington, and left the commission, I think, having succeeded on a number of important policy areas. But I also realized that a 5-year term was all I wanted, that the politics ultimately didn't interest me that much. It was a lot of to do about nothing on a lot of silly, I thought, political issues. But that's just me. I know people find politics fascinating. Many people do. I ultimately found it kind of boring, the politics side. But the policy side, I loved. And I really enjoyed being chairman of the agency. I loved the people at the agency. I loved being their captain for those years I was there. And and write about this in my book. I enjoyed it very much. And the work we did in a number of areas, especially in the area actually of our global swaps market, especially our relationship with London. As a result of work I did, I was given a wonderful honor, the Freedom of the City of London,
Oh,
because of
wow.
how closely my agency worked with the Bank of England on a number of key projects, and it's something I'm very proud of. I have the Freedom parchment on my wall in my home study, and it means a great deal to me. But also the work we did on cryptocurrency. We were really very forward-leaning. We're ahead of the rest of the world on that, and it's something I'm also very proud of. So I really enjoyed those 5 years. I write about it with a great deal of affection. I think I tell some very funny stories about those years in my book, and it positioned me now that I've left government to focus on my foundation work in creating a central bank digital currency, what we call a digital dollar. It's allowed me to write. I do some advisory work in the crypto space. I'm also actually doing something that's really fun, and that is I'm investing now in some crypto companies
Oh, very cool.
and in some new technology companies, and getting to work with a lot of young entrepreneurs. I was just down in Philadelphia at the Wharton School of Business, meeting with a group of young entrepreneurs that are starting some really new digital technology companies, and everything from digital identity to wholesale payments and retail payments using cryptocurrency. And so being able to advise them and invest in them is something I'm really having a ball doing.
I mean, after you left, the politics side, and you've really delved into crypto. What was it about the future of money that really got your attention?
Well, so here's where, to young people that may be interested in going into finance, I think the financial services industry worldwide is going to transform dramatically in the next 25 years. And anybody that's interested in this space, I would heavily recommend going into it right now, because I think the opportunity to play a role in a wholesale revolution in financial services is remarkable. And that's this combination of blockchain technology and tokenized representations of value. And perhaps for another podcast sometime, we'll talk about that. But those are foundational technological changes that I think will dramatically transform financial services. And I think you could see new entrants into this industry, even companies today like FTX and Coinbase, in the next 20 years becoming, major global institutions, challenging some well-known household high street names that we know today, because they're adopting these new technologies from the start, not having to use them to replace a whole bunch of legacy, analog-based systems. And I think this is a very exciting time to get into the industry, and it's one of the reasons why I'm enjoying so much working with a lot of new entrants that are going into the industry, advising them now. So I think it's a very exciting time.
For somebody thinking about going into it, what's something they could either a skill set they could build, or some sort of knowledge base they should be thinking about learning to go into this new phase of finance?
I think some basic level of coding capability is really important. Even when I was in university, I learned some basic elements of accountancy and economics, and I would say those are important as well. But I think some basic level of computer coding, I think, is critically important as well if one wants to go into finance. That doesn't mean one should go in and become a coder if that's not what one wants to do, but understanding how that's done, I think, is very important. I think understanding the legacy financial system and the history of it, how we got here, is very important. The other thing is, I'm an unashamed free market, a believer in free markets. I'm an unabashed champion for economic liberty, and I think that one of the things that so excites me about this technology, it's the opportunity to break away from from the institutional dominance in the digital world of big tech companies like Facebook and others, and in the financial system, the dominance of big bank high street superstores, and the ability to look at greater, I think, financial freedom by new entrants and new possibilities of direct peer-to-peer. I mean, if we can send a text message or a music file around the world in a second, you know, why are we paying enormous fees to large banks and others to move money during bankers' hours, 9 to 5, 5 days a week, instead of with the same speed and low cost and efficiency that we use in other digital processes? And why can't we operate on a person-to-person basis rather than having everything we do dominated by intermediaries? Well, we can. The technology's there, and I think that's the direction of travel over the next several decades, and that's why I think this is an exciting area for young people to get involved in today.
So if you could look back on your career, would you change anything? Would you make any different decisions, or would you have done exactly what you did?
There's nothing I regret. In fact, I've enjoyed all of it. So there's not a thing at all that I regret. The funny thing is, along the way, I sometimes regretted I didn't have a master plan. And now when I look back, it looks like it was all a grand plan and it all worked out. And so what I'd say to young people is, don't worry about not having a master plan. Don't worry about where you'll be in 15 or 20 years. Just think about what you want to do now and what you want to do next. And again, follow your nose, follow your interests, follow your instincts, and be confident. Actually, I tell you what, I think life is wonderful. I mean, I really think the course of life, human life, is wonderful. I love being married to a wonderful woman now for 32 years. We've got 3 great kids. We have a lot of laughs together. Life's been good, and I think life is good. And don't be afraid. Do not be afraid. Be fearless. Don't be reckless, but don't be fearful. Live your life fully. You only get one shot at it. So just go out there and be who you are. Follow your nose. Have some laughs along the way. Be with people that support you. Avoid the people that bring you down, and just go out and live a wonderful life.
Well, that is a brilliant place to end this. Thank you so much for coming on, Christopher. I love your outlook on life. I think you've had an amazing career, and thank you for sharing your advice with our listeners.
Daniel, it's been my pleasure. Thank you today for this time today.
Absolute pleasure. And where can people find you, your book, and anything you're up to?
Yeah, so take a look at my website, www.chrisgiancarlo.org, www.cryptodad.org. My book is called CryptoDad, The Fight for the Future of Money. It's available on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, most of the online retailers. The audio version is coming out on Tuesday, December 21st. It's available now in pre-order. There's a European edition. We're just in the Japanese edition. We just did a big Hebrew edition. So the book is really fun. I think folks are enjoying it, and I highly recommend it. I hope your listeners enjoy it. And contact me through my website if you'd like to speak further. I'm on LinkedIn as well.
Amazing. Thank you, Christopher.